You don't realize it yet, but discipline has a dark side that almost nobody understands. It's the part that quietly reshapes your personality, rewires your desires, and forces you to face things you've spent years avoiding. You've been told that discipline is the cure to everything. The answer to your procrastination, your inconsistency, your drifting potential. But there is a terrifying truth beneath all the motivational slogans and morning routine videos. Discipline, when built on the wrong foundation, doesn't make you stronger. It fractures you from the inside. It creates a hidden war between the part of you that wants to grow and the part of you that is exhausted from pretending. Modern productivity culture celebrates discipline like a holy virtue, but the old masters knew its shadow. They taught a system so powerful that it could rebuild a person from the ground up, but only if they were willing to confront the darkness it revealed. This ancient system has a name whispered in old training halls in Japan, Kage no Kokoro, the heart of the shadow. And if you understand it, your entire life could shift. But here's what no one tells you. Before this system strengthens you, it breaks you. Before it builds you, it exposes the lie you've been living. And if you're ready to face that, then subscribe and share the one habit you've been struggling with in the comments. Because the journey you're about to begin demands honesty before anything else. Your story begins with someone you already know, someone whose life overlaps with yours more than you might like to admit. Eli Navarro, 29 years old, remote worker, floating through life with a quiet sense of dissatisfaction. He wakes up late, scrolls through his phone more than he should, and convinces himself that tomorrow will be the day everything changes. He has tried every challenge imaginable: 75 hard, 5 wake-ups, 12 habits at once. But each attempt lasts only a few days before collapsing under the weight of impossible expectations. The pattern becomes predictable: hope, excitement, intensity, exhaustion, collapse, guilt. He beats himself up for failing the routine he forced on himself, then searches for a new routine to make the guilt go away. He thinks he lacks discipline, but the truth is far more uncomfortable. He has been trying to use discipline as a weapon against himself, punishing his mind for not matching the perfect image of productivity he sees online. His failures don't come from weakness. They come from fragmentation. You've lived this in your own way. You push hard for a few days, fall off, and blame yourself for not having enough willpower. But what if the problem is not your discipline, but the story you've built around it? Eli's turning point comes the night he searches something most people never dare to type into Google. Why am I disciplined for 3 days and then crash? That question opens the door to a forgotten world. He stumbles onto the writings of Yamaoka Tesshu, a legendary swordsman and Zen practitioner known for his brutally honest teachings. Tesshu believed that discipline without inner alignment is nothing more than ego wearing armor. He wrote that forcing yourself into routines you despise only breeds internal rebellion. Eli reads about Tesshu's early years, failing repeatedly despite intense training. The man practiced sword swings until his hands bled, meditated until his legs went numb, and still found himself trapped in the same patterns of overexertion, collapse, and shame, until he discovered the shadow heart, Kage no Kokoro, the idea that true discipline begins not with mastering habits, but with mastering the inner shadow. Eli doesn't understand it fully, but something inside him stirs. He realizes he isn't broken, he's misaligned. And the system that Tesshu hints at promises 3 stages that have rebuilt warriors, artists, monks, and masters for generations. Eli decides to try it, even though he knows it could expose parts of himself he's avoided for years. He starts with stage 1, the stage Tesshu called ego death through obedience. It sounds dramatic, but the brilliance lies in its simplicity. Tesshu forced his students to perform a single sword stroke thousands of times a day until their minds cracked open under the weight of repetition. Eli decides to test the same principle, but with something small. 1 push-up, 1 line of code, 1 page of writing, not a routine, not a challenge, a vow, every day, without exceptions. He thinks it will be easy. It is. The boredom is suffocating. The simplicity feels insulting. His mind begs for bigger goals, more excitement, more complexity. But that's the point. Harvard researchers published a study in 2021 showing that micro-repetition rewires the brain by bypassing the limbic resistance system. Tiny tasks slip past the defensive walls that usually sabotage you. But there's a darker truth hidden inside this process. When you strip discipline down to its smallest action, you expose the real enemy. It was never laziness. It was your addiction to complexity, your craving for dramatic change, your need to feel impressive rather than consistent. Discipline loses its glamour, and what replaces it is raw honesty. Eli breaks twice during the first week. He misses a day, then spirals, then starts again. But each time he returns, something in him gets quieter, steadier. Obedience begins to replace ambition. And a strange calmness settles in. You've never felt this because your routines have always been too big, too complicated, too performative. You've never lowered yourself enough to touch the ground where discipline actually grows. But stage one is only the doorway. And beyond that doorway lies a trap that nearly everyone falls into. The eternal student, the collector of systems, the person who feels like they're growing because they're learning, not because they're changing. You've seen this everywhere. People who buy planners, books, courses, challenges, routines, apps, and convince themselves they're improving simply because information is entering their mind. But nothing changes in their life. Teshu warned his students, a full cup cannot hold the sword. Most people fail not because they can't build discipline, but because they fill their lives with too many tools to ever use any of them well. Eli realizes he has done this for years. He didn't lack discipline. He drowned in noise. The dark side of discipline is that it becomes a distraction, a way to avoid doing the one simple thing that would actually change your life. When Eli empties his cup, he finally becomes ready for stage two. Controlled breaking, a stage designed to tear down the rigid image of discipline and replace it with something living. Teshu taught that every student must train under two masters within themselves, the master of rigidity and the master of flow. Rigidity gives you structure. Flow gives you adaptability. Without balance, discipline either suffocates you or dissolves. So Eli begins a new practice. His mornings become structured with strict micro-actions, and his evenings become fluid with creative exploration. This contradiction becomes his training ground. He learns that discipline isn't about being perfect every day. It's about learning how to bend without breaking. Tokyo University published a study in 2016 revealing that adaptive discipline habits last nearly twice as long as rigid ones. Teshu understood this centuries earlier. Eli feels the shift. His routines stop feeling like cages. They become anchors, flexible, alive, responsive. He breaks his habits intentionally on certain days just to learn that he can come back without crashing into guilt or self-hatred. And the realization hits him hard. The problem was never that he fell off. It was that he didn't know how to return. The third stage arrives without warning because the final test in any system is never planned. It simply comes. Eli receives a company-wide announcement. Layoffs are coming, interviews are reshuffling, and employees are being tested under pressure. Suddenly, he faces three opponents at once: an overwhelming workload, a rising storm of imposter syndrome, and a body on the edge of exhaustion. This is where most people break. This is where fragile discipline shatters completely. But Eli has trained for this unknowingly. Stage 3 is Teshu's teaching of formlessness. When the mind is empty of fear, it becomes able to respond to chaos without collapsing. Eli begins navigating the workload with surprising clarity. Not perfect, but grounded. His old patterns would have spiraled. Now, he breathes through each task like a swordsman stepping through a field of unseen attackers. The dark side of discipline reveals itself fully here. If your discipline is rigid, it will fail you the moment life becomes unpredictable. But when discipline is rooted in presence instead of performance, you become resilient in a way others can feel. People around Eli begin to notice something different about him, and not everyone likes it. His quiet consistency unsettles coworkers who preferred the old version of him. When you start to change, the people around you feel it like a vibration in the air. Your presence becomes a mirror that reflects their own inconsistency. Some feel inspired, but many feel threatened. Teshu warned about this social cost. When your inner blade sharpens, people feel the edge even when you're silent. Eli learns to withstand the discomfort. Discipline demands solitude, not because you push people away, but because not everyone is ready to walk the path with you. And the truth is, you felt this too. The moment you try to better yourself, someone always pulls you back with jokes, doubt, or subtle discouragement. Not because you're wrong, but because your growth exposes their stagnation. But the beauty of the system is that it applies everywhere. The guitarist who practices a single chord transition every day builds more neural myelin than the one who practices 20 songs inconsistently. The coder who solves one problem daily becomes exponentially sharper than the coder who burns themselves out once a week. The entrepreneur who focuses on consistent customer outreach instead of chasing new ideas builds a business that actually survives. Repetition, controlled breaking, formless adaptation. The pattern is universal. The ancient masters weren't teaching swordsmanship. They were teaching the architecture of human improvement. The truth you've been avoiding comes next, and it will sting. Discipline won't save you if you build it on a foundation of lies. You lie when you pretend you can sustain routines that exhaust you. You lie when you chase productivity aesthetics instead of real growth. You lie when you tell yourself that failing once means you should give up entirely. Discipline built on ego collapses. Discipline built on identity endures. You don't need more discipline. You need fewer illusions. Your life will be shaped by the habits you return to when you're tired, overwhelmed, discouraged, or afraid. And whether you want to admit it or not, those moments reveal who you truly are. But change is possible if you're willing to rebuild yourself correctly. Oxford released a study in 2022 revealing that identity-based habits are the only ones that survive long-term pressure. Teshu knew this. Eli lived it. And now it's your turn. Begin by naming the shadow habit you've been avoiding. Reduce it to one tiny action. Repeat it every day for 14 days until your ego begins to dissolve. Add controlled breaks twice a week to teach yourself to return without guilt. Introduce one unpredictable challenge each week to train adaptability. Review who you are becoming every month so your discipline aligns with your identity, not your fear. This is the legacy of the shadow heart, not perfection, alignment. And now, it's your move. Comment the first weakness or skill you're ready to rebuild with the shadow discipline system, because your transformation begins the moment you name the thing you fear.